One of Sailor Moon's key defining qualities is that she's boy crazy.
You signed up just for the boys?
But hear me out. She's also
girl crazy.
You take care.
She's so cool and pretty. Did you get off here just to chase after that girl? She's so beautiful. And I've got nothing else to do.
Like many young American girls in the 90s, Sailor Moon was my entry point into Japanese media and the magical girl genre in particular. But because the show only aired a heavily censored English-dubbed version in the US that made significant changes.
It seems so long ago, my first kiss. I remember it vividly. It was with Brad, the cutest guy in the school.
I didn't realize until I rewatched it as an adult how extremely fucking gay this show is.
Yeah, it's totally gay.
I knew about the infamous plot change that rewrote Sailor Uranus and Neptune, who were the loves of each other's lives, past, present, and future, as cousins.
They're girls and cousins too. Fantastic, you're the best cousins in the world.
And even that, I don't think I knew about until I was much older and had access to a Tumblr account. But I'm not kidding when I say between Sailor Moon, Tuxedo Mask, and honestly, like most of the Sailor Guardians, there's not a single heterosexual in the entire Moon Kingdom. I rewatched the whole series during the pandemic and was quite honestly gagged. There's truly so much queer sexuality and gender stuff in Sailor Moon to analyze that I have to ask the series creator, Naoko, girl, are you one of us? So today I'm gonna do a deep dive into the gay allegations against our girl Sailor Moon, as well as a queer analysis of the entire series. When I was researching this video, I found out that the magical girl genre in general has surprisingly queer origins. So I'm also gonna get into the history and the evolution of the genre. Before I get into it, if you wanna see more videos from me about like Y2K teen girl nostalgia and media analysis, subscribe to my channel. It really helps a lot. And if you'd like to support my work, because these take a long time to produce, my Patreon is linked below. So if you've forgotten because you haven't watched Sailor Moon since you were a literal child, or if you've never seen it and you're watching this video because you're just curious, which we love and support, here's a brief explainer of the series. What's extremely important to understand about Sailor Moon is that it's primarily vibes-based, and the vibes are hyper-femme. What I mean by this is that things don't always have to make sense plot-wise. Emotions are really important in magical girl narratives, so sometimes the feeling of the scene or the emotionality of the characters takes precedence over the actual plot. Often down to the very last minute when all hope seems lost, something like a convenient magic crystal or a makeup compact kind of just appear and vanquish all of the Sailor Guardians' problems. For example, in the 4th season Sailor Moon Supers, Chibiusa, who is Sailor Moon's daughter from the future by the way, rings a little bell and a boy prince that transforms into a Pegasus appears to protect the world's beautiful dreams. So,
if someone would just make a law against men having beautiful dreams.
Yes, so thankfully some of my footage did get corrupted. Thank you so much for asking. So I'm filming on a different day. I'm gonna probably be swapping back and forth between footage. Hopefully that's not too distracting. Remember, this is a show intended for a 90s audience of young girls, so the art style and magical objects are usually ultra feminine. For better and for worse, the series frequently associates femininity with purity and love and romance. I think there was definitely an aspect of wish fulfillment for a certain type of girly girl aged 8 to 14 that the series targeted, tapping into that desire to have your own magic makeup compact that gives you a makeover and a cute outfit and superpowers and also fixes all of your problems. Unlike shonen anime aimed at boys aged 12 to 18, which regularly features violence and physical combat, fight sequences in Sailor Moon are usually resolved through non-violent solutions, such as forgiveness, healing, and friendship. Rather than vanquishing or imprisoning enemies, Sailor Moon relies on attacks with names like Moon Healing Escalation and Starlight Honeymoon Therapy Kiss to heal villains who were corrupted back to their previous form. Sailor Moon, abolitionist queen. Violence is usually not the answer to saving the world from destruction, and strength instead comes from mercy, understanding, and hope. In the series, everyone, including other Sailor Guardians, are always like, girl, you need to do a kill. The entire planet will be destroyed and every single person on it and everyone you love will die. So you do unfortunately need to slay some baddies. And despite all evidence otherwise, every single time, Usagi is just like, No, I actually think it's fine. I'm just gonna forgive everyone. I know this person wants to decimate the entire population of planets across the galaxy, but I'll probably just go ahead and forgive them. And then she's right, and she'll find some fucking crystal or something, and it's completely fine.
1,000,000 diamonds!
Okay.
So yeah, I personally think Sailor Moon is best enjoyed without thinking of the mechanism behind their powers or the particulars of the plot too hard, especially since teen girls' emotions are a primary focus thematically. It makes sense that the series is less interested in the details of the plot than the feelings behind it. I can't tell if this is analysis or me just being a Sailor Moon apologist. What I love about Usagi is that she's a huge crybaby.
There's no one in the entire world that suffers more than kids who get scolded for bad grades!
She's literally just a girl.
So you're really just a girl?
Sailor Moon's backstory is that she is the reincarnation of the Moon Princess, Princess Serenity, who of course ruled over the Moon Kingdom during the Silver Millennium. Got it? Are you guys keeping up? There are the inner Sailor Guardians, which include Sailor Moon, Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, and Venus. And then there are the outer Guardians, Sailor Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn. The villains of Sailor Moon are exclusively beautiful women and beautiful gay men. Beautiful queens and beautiful queens. This includes Zoisite and Kunzite, who are the villains in the first season and the first gay couple on the show.
I will always love you.
This also includes Fisheye, who is a season 4 villain that's very femme and kind of gender fluid.
Cross-dressing again.
No, not this time. I was planning on going out to meet him just as my beautiful self.
I feel like 90% of the male villains in Sailor Moon are gay, but these are the most explicitly canon queer villains, in addition to one other villain from the movies that we'll get into later in the video. Okay, so all the Sailor Guardians are gay. End of video. Exhibit A. We'll start with the most obvious ones. Michiru Kaio, aka Sailor Neptune, and Haruka Tenno, aka Sailor Uranus. So like most American kids of my generation, I was first exposed to the original English dub of Sailor Moon that Cartoon Network aired. The Deke dub became infamous for taking some liberties in terms of these two's relationship. Notably, the older dub changed the relationship status between Michiru and Haruka from romantic partners to flirty cousins.
Leave it to me, cuz.
You've heard of gal pals. Let Deke Entertainment introduce you to cousins. Also, I need you to know that I found a website that uploaded scans of 90s anime magazines, including a bunch of articles about Sailor Moon. I think the pre-social media discourse about Sailor Moon is really funny because I found one article that said, Haruka and Michiru, as we all know, are lesbians. These two? Obviously lesbians. In another article I found, the writer described them as inseparable couple, Sailor Uranus and Neptune, the nature of whose sexual orientation is rather hard to determine. These two? Maybe lesbians. Then I found a third article that simply referred to Haruka as Michiru's friend.
And they were roommates.
Oh my god, they were roommates.
I need y'all to appreciate the fact that I went deep into the homophobic trenches of the Sailor Moon archives for this. Thankfully, the current Viz dub restored their relationship status from weirdly sexual cousins back to gay lesbian aunts who make a lot of sexual innuendos.
Why don't we save the pillow talk for after we get back in bed?
I think their relationship is super cute. They're so devoted to each other, but also protecting the galaxy together, and intense. They're both very intense. For a lot of the third season, Sailor Uranus and Neptune kind of have two modes, where they're either incredibly serious and combative, or they're extremely flirty. Haruka flirts with pretty much any femme woman she comes across.
That's a line that Haruka loves to use to string along all the cute girls.
I think the energy they kind of give is that they're each other's primary partner. Their love is profound and endures across space and time, but they also feel a little non-monogamish to me. Their arrangement with Sailor Pluto in the fourth season, where they choose to live together and raise Hotaru as a throuple, screams Los Angeles polycule to me, and I love it. Hotaru calls Haruka daddy, and Haruka has her high femme primary and a goth GF who helps with childcare.
Sailor Moon!
Moving on to our next queer culprit, the rest of the Sailor Guardians, quite honestly.
That's why we don't need men. It's our life.
Sailor Moon, Jupiter, Mars, and Venus all have a crush on Haruka when they first meet her. And I do want to get into Haruka's gender presentation and identity in a second because I think it's really interesting. And definitely a recurring theme that comes up within the magical girl genre. Mako Kino, aka Sailor Jupiter, actually has an entire gay panic episode about Haruka. That is the entire A-plot of the episode. Haruka almost crashes into Mako and Usagi on her motorcycle because of course she does. And she's extremely apologetic, but also kind of suave about it. Mako has a minor scrape on her hand, and Haruka gently wraps it for her with her own scarf. And as we all learned from All Too Well, parentheses 10-minute version, parentheses Taylor's version, giving a girl your scarf can either be the most intimate romantic gesture you can make, or if you're Jake Gyllenhaal,
Violence.
Haruka flirts with Mako a little more and then rides away on her sick motorcycle. Usagi immediately gets so suspicious of Mako, and to be fair, Sailor Jupiter basically just like imprinted on her. Mako is heart eyes emoji the entire time. She's blushing. Her eyes are twinkling in that meaningful anime way. Romantic music is playing. She decides she needs to see Haruka again immediately, if not sooner.
Do either of you know where Haruka happens to live?
And won't stop mentioning her in conversations. So much so that her friends are talking behind her back and wondering if she's quote unquote changed orientations. I'm not sure if the Sailor Moon team or the manga creator were aware at the time that bisexuality does exist, but I think that maybe would have answered some questions for Naoko. Seriously, girl, are you one of us? But this scene is so good.
Did Mako suddenly change her orientation? That doesn't matter.
Handsome or not, I can't believe Mako would go chasing after another woman.
You're missing the point here. You're one to judge. Isn't this yours, Ray?
Sailor Mercury is our #1 ally. It's reminding me of when I told everyone in high school that I was straight, but I was randomly the biggest LGBT ally and supporter of gay rights you have ever met. I was participating in Day of Silence. My English teachers were telling me I was brave. I was protesting Prop 8 after school and had to have my mom come pick me up afterward. So random of me. The episode ends with Mako realizing that she admires Haruka's confidence and gender expression, which I think does make sense since Mako struggles with her own femininity. She's depicted as a bit of a tomboy. Her signature hairstyle is a ponytail. Mako's classmates whisper about how they think she's scary because she's really tall and strong.
No one ever talks to us like that.
I know that Japanese people are shorter than Americans on average, and I'm a Japanese person who's really short, but I cannot stress enough that Mako is 5'5". They make it sound like she's this giant freak of nature who's going to destroy their city, and she's literally 5'5". So because Mako is bullied for her height and tomboyishness, and also rejected a lot by the boys she likes, she learns how to cook and garden to feel more feminine. She's always bringing these really cute, complicated bentos to school. My girl is maybe overcompensating a bit, and I don't blame her. I read this as Mako choosing to partake in traditionally feminine hobbies, at least initially, to better perform the expectations placed on her gender. Mako feels the pressure on girls and women to be petite and demure, as well as the trappings of compulsory heterosexuality, which places the expectation on women to perform femininity in a certain way in order to attract men. At the end of the episode, Mako puts on a Hillary pantsuit to signal that Haruka helped her feel more confident. So people will say that Mako just looks up to Haruka and doesn't actually have queer feelings for her. First and foremost, I'd like to point to the scene on the boat.
Haruka has a really cool personality, you know? There's nothing wrong with finding that attractive.
Secondly, I'm sorry, this is the straight reading of the episode. That Mako meets a butch lesbian, becomes obsessed with her, and her gender nonconformity empowers her to explore a more masked gender expression. Okay, sounds fruity to me, but whatever. In fact, there are actually a lot of queer readings of Sailor Moon because the Sailor Guardians navigating complicated feelings around gender and sexuality is a central theme in the series. For example, when any character meets Haruka for the first time, they assume she's a cis man.
Who's this good-looking guy with you?
In the episode when she first appears, Usagi and Minako immediately imprint on her and literally follow her around all day to figure out if she's Michiru's quote-unquote boyfriend. In the 90s anime, the other Sailor Guardians refer to Haruka as a woman. However, in the manga, Haruka is described multiple times as both a man and a woman.
Haruka happens to be
someone very special to me.
Oh.
Which is also how she's depicted in the 2014 reboot Sailor Moon Crystal.
Uranus is not one gender or the other, she is both. As a sailor guardian, she possesses the strength of both a man and a woman.
I was able to find a magazine article in An America from 1996 that says this about Haruka. It's difficult to tell if the boyishly handsome sailor Uranus is male or female, due to the aspect of her associated planet, Uranus, which has no particular gender in Japanese. However, there was another interview I saw referenced a lot with Naoko herself, where she says, Haruka has always been a girl and always will be. All right, well, case closed. No, confusingly, she followed this up by saying, Uranus has the heart of a man. Girl, what do you mean by that? She was a girl, he had the heart of a man. Can I make it any more obvious? It's possible that this is a reference to Princess Knight, a 1960s anime that's considered the prototype for the magical girl genre. In Princess Knight, the protagonist, Sapphire, is a young girl who was born with both the pink heart of a girl and the blue heart of a boy.
I already have a blue one.
What?
1960s. Gender essentialism aside, there's certainly parallels between Sapphire, who must pretend to be a prince and fights with a sword, and Haruka, who is often read as a boy and also uses a sword as her primary weapon. Though Princess Knight obviously didn't invent a woman having a sword. That was Chapel Roan at the VMAs. This has nothing to do with the video, but I love the dialogue at the end of this scene where Haruka is like, oh, you're being a little too rough.
Yeah, you're being a little too rough.
Oh, am I? I'll be more gentle once we're alone.
When your masked girlfriend finally lets her tough guy facade slip. So the answer of whether Haruka is non-binary, gender fluid, or just a masked cis woman, I think depends on the series and is open to interpretation. And I think all the other Sailor Guardians are gay as hell.
She's right. That's why we don't need men.
But now it's time to talk about our girl, Miss Usagi Tsukino. Don't think the Queen of the Moon Kingdom was gonna come out of this video unscathed. She's never beating the bisexual allegations. I have some major criticisms of the Crystal reboot. First of all, why do they look like that? Like, the series was pitched as having a more similar design style to Naoko's beautiful, stunning, breathtaking manga designs.
Talented, brilliant, incredible, amazing, show-stopping, spectacular, never the same, totally unique.
And Toei did not understand the assignment even a little bit. It's quite frankly disrespectful. But what I do love about the reboot is that in season 1, Usagi is able to identify each of the Sailor Guardians because she develops little crushes on them. When she sees Sailor Mars for the first time, Usagi knows basically nothing about her, but randomly decides to follow her because she's so beautiful.
Did you get off here just to chase after that girl? She's so beautiful, and I've got nothing else to do.
Girl. There's not a straight explanation for this. Whenever she meets another Sailor Guardian, Usagi gushes over how cute she thinks they all are, and like, girl is blushing a lot.
You take care.
Okay, so how do I explain to you how gay Sailor Moon is for Sailor Uranus? Like, we know Haruka is extremely gay, that's a given. She hits on like every woman she meets.
That's a line that Haruka loves to use to string along all the cute girls.
But remember when Usagi first meets Haruka, she imprints on her immediately and then stalks her all day? You could argue that at this point, Usagi is operating under the assumption that Haruka is a cis man and only has hetero intentions. And like, I hear you. I think you're wrong, but I hear you. But baby, that's not even the half of it. It continues. So in Sailor Moon, as well as other magical girl anime, and honestly, a lot of Marvel stuff, secret identities are a big thing. In season 1, Sailor Moon not knowing Tuxedo Mask's identity and vice versa has a lot of romantic tension. And when they discover each other's secret identity, it escalates their relationship pretty quickly. One of the big questions in season 3 that the inner Sailor Guardians have when they first meet Neptune and Uranus is, who are they? They're kind of vague and mysterious, and to be honest, they're leaving the Sailor Guardians on red. They're very much like, leave us alone, we don't want to be your friends, and we won't help you. Yes, girl, give us nothing. But obviously Sailor Moon's whole thing is friendship, so is she letting it go? No, of course not. She's obsessed with them. And when I tell you that Sailor Moon discovers Uranus's secret identity because she recognizes her by scent, okay, so in the beginning of the episode, Haruka and Usagi are being chased by these guys that want to basically hate crime Haruka. They know Haruka is a more talented racer than they are, and they're just textbook misogynist about it. I mean, they say it's because she's a woman, but I have a hard time believing it isn't also a little homophobic. Usagi and Haruka have to kind of crouch and hide behind a bush, and Haruka protectively puts her arms around Usagi. What's interesting about this scene is that Usagi says she feels so safe in Haruka's arms, and compares it to the feeling of being held by Mamoru. Comparing her feelings about being held by a lesbian who's been hitting on her to being held by her beloved boyfriend and future husband, seems fruity. We're gonna come back to this later, but just keep in mind this idea of Usagi comparing being with other people to being with Mamo. The other thing of note about this scene is that when they're cuddling or whatever, Usagi notices that Haruka smells really good. Got it? Keep that in your mind. So later in the episode, Sailor Moon and Uranus are hiding from a different enemy in a cave because Uranus is injured. Sailor Moon helps her clean her wound, and Haruka's all reluctant and tough guy about it. But I do need to point out that that wound is being cleaned with like a rag and some cave water she found. Then Sailor Moon asks Uranus to scratch her back, which is cute, and they have a little heart-to-heart. But of course, the bad guys that were chasing them from before find them, and when they're crouching down to hide, Sailor Uranus puts her arms around Sailor Moon in kind of a sweet, protective way. And Usagi must have made a whole ass mental note about it earlier, because she realizes that Sailor Uranus is wearing the same perfume as Haruka.
This perfume smells familiar. Could she be?
Oh.
Recognizing another woman you barely know by scent, and that being a key factor in you discovering her secret identity, sapphic as hell. Sailor Moon's superpower is literally being bisexual. But that's not even all of it. The way they do this plot in the original source material and Sailor Moon Crystal is somehow even gayer. Sailor Uranus kisses Sailor Moon and then like prances away into the night. Like, imagine my surprise after watching the 90s anime as a child, thinking everyone was straight because of the dub, and then later learning that Sailor Moon was kissing girls on the mouth canonically. I just would have liked to have known that. Usagi is really conflicted about the kiss. She keeps replaying it in her head and also feels super guilty about whether or not she cheated on Mamoru. Usagi starts daydreaming about the kiss, and instead of imagining it with Sailor Uranus, she reimagines it with Haruka and kind of starts making the connection between the two. I think there's a couple different ways to read the two Sailor Guardians connection. Sailor Uranus tells Sailor Moon to back off and then kisses her. So one read is that the kiss is meant to rattle Sailor Moon and dissuade her from interfering with their plans. Kind of like that episode of Glee where Kurt Hummel teaches the football team to do the single ladies dance as a way of confusing the other team. This is what happens when you put gay people in charge. Another read is that Sailor Uranus is really desperate to tell Sailor Moon the truth about her identity and subconsciously wants her to find out. On some level, I think she and Sailor Neptune really do want to work with the other Guardians and be friends. So by that logic, all I can think is that maybe she's trying to help Sailor Moon connect the dots. Because the other Guardians say it really seems like she wants to tell us something. But like, all I'm saying is that kissing someone on the mouth is kind of a weird way of showing it. I'll just say that what I like about this version and the manga's version of the plot is that a lesbian kiss is pivotal to Sailor Moon beginning to figure out Uranus's secret identity. In conclusion, sapphic detective work is so important.
Roses have many thorns, and you should know that even red roses turn black when they wilt.
Oh, I'm sorry. You didn't think Tuxedo Mask would come out of this video unscathed? Well, I hate to be the one to tell you that Mamoru Chiba, never beating the bi allegations. Not when he was out there giving out red roses to gay aliens as a boy. Simply no. So I had completely forgotten about this movie. Sailor Moon R, the movie, not to be confused with Sailor Moon R, the TV series, is the first theatrically released Sailor Moon film. It was originally released in 1993 in Japan, but wasn't released until 1999 in the US on VHS. I used to have the VHS as a kid. I think I had all three movies, but back then Sailor Moon R had an older dub that I can only assume took out all of the queer references. So imagine my surprise when I rewatched this during the pandemic, and it ended up not only being the best out of the three 90s animated movies, but also extremely, extremely gay.
Yeah, it's totally gay.
Sailor Moon R opens at a botanical garden, and obviously there's lots of florals. Mamoru is there with Usagi, and seeing all of the flowers jogs his memory, and he has a flashback to his childhood. Let me set the scene for you. Little baby Mamoru is on the roof with another boy who looks to be around the same age. Mamo runs to the other boy. We haven't seen any of their faces yet. Mamo is breathless when he reaches him, and I have to add there is romantic, dreamy music playing. The sun is setting. He hands the other boy a red rose, and they stare at each other wordlessly for a long time. Then the boy accepts the rose and says this to Mamoru.
One day I'll come back with lots of flowers for you too.
The boy disappears into sparkles, basically, and Mamo starts crying. The boy, speaking through the sparkles, tells Mamoru not to cry and reiterates that he's gonna come back for him. He also tells him, don't forget me. Mamoru snaps out of the flashback, and I love this next scene because without context, it seems like Mamo's going through all 12 stages of gay panic. So great. All this stuff happens in the first couple minutes of the movie. Everyone walks outside, and obviously, in addition to the flashback, the sky darkens and millions of pink flower petals start falling from the sky. Then, oh my god, can you believe it? The grown-up version of that boy Mamoru gave a flower to shows up. Mamo does not recognize him at all, even a little bit. And I'm sorry, if I was putting on that whole show for Mamoru and he didn't remember me, I would have to myself. You would never see me again. Also, I need you to see this scene with Usagi's reaction to Mamoru having a super intense meeting with his gay alien ex-boyfriend.
Sorry, you can't have him. It's just that Mamo is my boyfriend.
So then the gay alien, who is addicted to Mamoru, gets jealous of Usagi. He does an Arthur-style big hit on her, and it's actually pretty fucked up.
Move it.
In addition to that, Mamoru does like virtually nothing. The scene is in slow motion, and it looks like he has so much time to react, and he just stands there even as she gets hit and falls to the ground. There's such a weird delay on his end. It looks like he hates her. The alien guy tells Mamoru that he intends to fulfill his promise to him, and then he ominously disappears into the sparkly ether again. And finally, Mamoru does move forward with remembering that this guy's name is Fiore, but he says his name with such intensity, and he's like, it can't be.
Fiore. It can't be.
Usagi is just like, Mamo, what?
Mamo, what?
Mamoru suddenly tells everyone he needs to leave, just super random, and just takes off with zero explanation.
Mamo, what?
Back home, Usagi is like lying flat on the floor, losing her goddamn mind.
But he really did look like more than just a friend.
Then there's a whole scene where the girls speculate if Mamoru is gay. Ami is like, he must be popular with the boys too. This next line isn't in the English sub, but in the dub, there's a Seinfeld reference. You can barely hear it in the background.
If there's anything wrong with that.
I had to turn up the volume so loud to hear this next part of the conversation. But afterward, Minako is like, I used to know a couple like that in my old school.
I know some people at my school who are in that kind of relationship. Really?
Sailor V, gunning for Ami's title as #1 LGBTQ+ ally. She's like, I met gay people once. Cool. Of course, Fiore returns to wreak havoc and transforms into his real alien form. We find out that he has this cunty little flower on his chest, and she's kind of like brainwashing and manipulating him into spreading a whole army of cunty flowers to invade the planet. Also, I gotta be honest, if I saw these two in West Hollywood, I wouldn't even think twice. This is a common pairing. I always loved Tuxedo Mask's super extra grand appearances and the stupid little speech he always does. This one is especially fun.
A beautiful flower turns ugly when nurtured by a twisted heart. Enough, Fiore!
Totally, I could not agree more. I'm always saying that. Tuxedo Mask is like, bro, why are you doing all this? And the argument that ensues between these two men, I'm just gonna let it speak for itself.
Why ease your loneliness with a silly girl like her?
The straight agenda strikes again. When will it end? Unfortunately, due to jealousy, Fiore does move forward with trying to end Sailor Moon's life. He like shoots out his nails and they turn into long claws. Obviously, Tuxedo Mask jumps in the way to protect Sailor Moon and he gets brutally stabbed. Diva down. Tuxedo Mask has grave injuries and Fiore picks up his lifeless body and whisks him away into the sky. And the first thing Usagi says after Mamoru is kidnapped, "Not again. Bitch, why does this keep happening to you?" Fiore brings Mamoru back to the hyperbaric chamber crystal that he uses to heal him. We get a flashback of baby Fiore traveling alone through space with no parents and finally landing on Earth. Mamoru, who's in the hospital after surviving a crash that killed both his parents, is the one who finds Fiore and helps him. He brings him back to his hospital bed, which, like, can you imagine being a hospital nurse at the end of your shift doing your rounds and you see this.
One look into your eyes, and I knew that you had called me here to this world. Neither of us would be alone anymore.
Last round of the night, what's my recently orphaned patient up to? I'd just be like, that's the nurse on the next shift's problem. I do not have time for prepubescent orphaned gay alien. Unfortunately, Fiore's body can't survive on Earth, so he has to leave Mamoru. But as we know, he promises to come back and bring him flowers. Since then, Fiore has been traveling the universe looking for the perfect flower to bring back to him. Very heterosexual behavior.
Oh yeah, full hetero.
Obviously, he finds the cunty little flower from earlier, which is called the Cassinian blossom. He says as soon as he touched the flower, he understood that he needed to annihilate all of the humans on Earth who quote-unquote disregarded and left Mamoru all alone. The Cassinian flower is clearly controlling Fiore and convincing him that this is what's best for Mamo, despite the fact that that's obviously the opposite of what he wants. I think in spite of the flower manipulating and hypnotizing Fiore, he really deep down wants to have Mamoru's best interests at heart. In his mind, he brought Mamo back to a safe place and healed him. He got him this beautiful, totally non-problematic flower to demonstrate his love. When the Sailor Guardians find them and wonder if it's a trap, he assures them that he could never use Mamoru as bait. So could his execution use a little work? Absolutely. But destroying the human race aside, which go off, King, the intentions are there. So the Guardians fight Fiore's diva army, the girls get their asses beat. Sailor Moon starts sobbing in the middle of a field of flowers, if you can imagine, a likely place for her to be. She gives a speech about how she's giving up because she can't watch her friends be hurt anymore. Fiore sustains unexplained psychic damage from this. He's grabbing his forehead what is this feeling? He's so dramatic.
What is this that I'm feeling?
Homosexuality. The Cassinian flower convinces Fiore that Sailor Moon is trying to take Mamoru from him, and they fuse in a Steven Universe fusion-esque way that totally reminds me of one of the bosses in Elden Ring, the one with all the arms. I think his name is Godric the Grafted or something. Fiore overtakes Sailor Moon and drains her of all her energy. He tells the Sailor Guardians that none of them understand the loneliness that he and Mamoru felt, which leads to the girls all having tragic flashbacks to before they became friends and were bullied or misunderstood. I love Minako's flashback though, because they all have legitimately sad experiences, except hers is two girls whispering ugh, she's always so busy. Maybe she's a superhero like Sailor V. As if being compared to a beautiful superhero is a traumatic backstory. Also, she is Sailor V, so they called it. Fiore goes to finish off Sailor Moon, but Mamoru strikes him with his classic single red rose. Fiore loses his Godric the Grafted transformation and loses his goddamn mind about Tuxedo Mask throwing a flower at him.
It's all over. He threw a flower at me.
Sailor Moon fully embodies what I like to call little girl nonsense. I don't mean this as a pejorative. I'm 31 years old and writing video essays about Sailor Moon, so obviously it speaks to the depths of my soul. The little girl nonsense of this scene is that throwing a red rose at someone is emotional violence. There is nothing more vile and heinous that you can do than throwing a flower. In the criminal justice system, flower-based offenses are considered especially heinous. Also, because this was made for little girls, the meaning behind Tuxedo Mask's red rose is obvious. Hanakatoba is a Japanese phrase meaning the language of flowers, and benibara is the Japanese word for red rose, which symbolizes passion and romantic love. Also, don't anyone dare make fun of my American pronunciation. I'm already the laughingstock of my family. What I kind of don't love is that the movie retcons baby Mamoru giving Fiore the rose. We get another flashback scene showing that baby Usagi was actually there at the hospital as well, because of the birth of her little brother. So little Usagi apparently has open access to the entirety of the hospital. 6 years old, and thankfully they have given her free reign of the place. She finds Mamoru crying because he's grieving the death of his parents, and she takes one of the flowers she's supposed to give to her mom to him. So the rose that Mamo gave Fiore was actually from Usagi, and that's the origin of Tuxedo Mask's seemingly endless supply of signature red roses. This isn't my favorite backstory. I think it's a little too cutesy, and I didn't really need for Usagi and Mamoru to have met as children. But I love that the movie tries to explain away all of the incredibly homosexual vibes by saying, actually, Usagi gave the red rose to Mamoru in the hospital, so it's not gay. Not retconning a character's backstory within the same movie just to be no homo. But I do like that at the end, Fiore is able to redeem himself by saving Usagi's life. because I do think he's one of the more sympathetic Sailor Moon antagonists. Of course, we can't let him live. Tuxedo Mask might have to confront his feelings for him in a real meaningful way. Okay, so how do I even begin to explain the Sailor Starlights? I guess it's not that hard to explain on paper. There are 3 Sailor Guardians from a different solar system disguised as J-pop idols. Right now, K-pop is obviously huge, but in the 90s, it was all about J-pop. In season 5, we're introduced to a pop group called the Three Lights, which are the Starlights celebrity boy band alter egos. So what you need to understand about the Three Lights is that 1, they are pop icons, and 2, for seemingly no reason at all, they have the most unsettlingly long ponytails. They're very much like Anakin Skywalker level of rat tail. I hate them so much. Oh, thank God for that. I get that the Starlights are drawn in a more modern, updated style, and for season 5, the character designs are updated a bit across the board. I actually really like the update to the main Sailor Guardians designs. I think a lot of the fans are less into the Starlights designs, but take out the rat tails and I personally don't have any complaints. Like, yeah, Taiki is kind of insane looking, so maybe do another pass on his huge lesbian forehead. But otherwise, I don't mind the designs. Especially Naoko's designs. I think she can make just about anything look gorgeous. I only recently learned while researching for this that Naoko originally drew the Starlights without the crazy long ponytails, but it was the toy company Bandai that requested the dolls have long hair so the toys would maybe sell better. I'm not sure what the exact reasoning was for this, but I know they made the Sailor Moon Barbie-esque dolls with brushable hair, and I was always so jealous of my friends who had them. So maybe they wanted the Starlights toys to match that energy. But instead of redoing the designs with longer hair, it seems like Naoko did not want to change a single thing and just kind of copy-pasted these long ponytails onto their pre-existing pixie cuts. So once again, I have consumerism to blame for truly terrible design decision-making. The Sailor Guardians are teen girls, so of course they are standing the Three Lights hard, and of course they know that the Three Lights are filming a J-drama in the park nearby and rush to go see them. And in a very YN, Your Name fanfiction way, the Three Lights transfer to the girlies' school. This is like the Sailor Moon equivalent of if peak 1D 2011 era Harry Styles transferred to your school and started hanging out with you and your friends. It's somehow both blatant tween girl wish fulfillment fantasy and truly inspired. Spoiler alert for Sailor Stars, a season that premiered on Japanese television 30 years ago. At the beginning of the season, Usagi sees her beloved boyfriend Mamoru off at the airport as he departs to go to college in the US. I don't remember the exact amount of time he's supposed to be gone, but it's somewhere between 6 months and a year. It's definitely alluded to. We know something isn't quite right, but for most of the 5th season, Usagi believes Mamo is in the US. She's writing him daily letters and she doesn't get any letters back in return. She's like, that's weird. He just must be really busy with school. For the entirety of season 5, Mamoru has not responded to a single letter. It's been months and months, and the love of her life couldn't even pick up the phone, let alone get out a pen to write her back a single time. Not once. She is getting blank postcards that she assumes are from him, but why wouldn't he be writing a single thing on them? Usagi is also calling his phone repeatedly just so she can hear his voice on the answering machine, which is super fucking sad. Usagi also doesn't tell any of her friends about this, so they all think she's in regular correspondence with her boyfriend because why wouldn't she be? And then only a few episodes before the finale, she finally lets it slip, and the girls are like, what the fuck? This is not normal. Why didn't you fucking say anything? And do you want to know where Mamoru is? The whole time Usagi is like, why is Mamo ignoring me? Yeah, he's actually fucking dead. He's been dead the whole fucking season. It's actually so insane. Tuxedo Mask's body has been cold the entirety of season 5. I kind of just thought he was kidnapped and in Galaxia's clutches, because if there's one thing Tuxedo Mask is gonna do, it's get kidnapped. He is constantly in someone's clutches. Not again. Also, Galaxia is the final baddie in the series, and they kind of retcon it so she's actually the source of all evil. All the other baddies were being orchestrated by Galaxia this whole time, obviously. But anyway, Mamoru is incredibly deceased. Keep this in the back of your mind, but remember in Usagi's POV, she believes Mamo is alive and just ignoring her. This is the season 5 headspace you want to occupy. So for months, Usagi has been super depressed. She thinks her boyfriend hates her. She's trying her best, but girl is not doing well. Usagi is that girl who says she's in a really good place right now when she's never been closer to a depressive episode. So naturally, she starts a situationship with Seiya, the leader of a global teen idol group and pop sensation. I would say Seiya and Usagi's dynamic is very Twilight New Moon. You know when Bella is severely clinically depressed and starts hanging out with a quote-unquote normal boy, Jacob Black, before he turns into a werewolf and imprints on her baby? Is Seiya a mega celebrity in one of the most famous fictional Japanese boy bands? Yes. But compared to her dead boyfriend, Tuxedo Mask, aka Prince Endymion, the Prince of the Earth during the era of the Silver Millennium, Seiya is normal boy. We'll get into the gender of it all in a second, but for context, Usagi does not know the Starlights' identities until later in the season. She's just like, this is just a super famous run-of-the-mill cis boy because she doesn't know he's a Sailor Guardian in addition to being a pop icon. Their dynamic is kind of argumentative but flirty, which was also Usagi's default when she first met Mamoru. Remember, she fucking hated Mamoru when she first met him.
Hey Usagi, do you actually know that guy? Because he is totally gorgeous.
Wrong! There's nothing gorgeous about him!
The writers like giving her an enemies to lovers thing. Honestly, I know this is maybe controversial, but I think Seiya and Usagi are sweet. In the first season of the 90s anime, Mamoru is aged up and seems a lot older than her. He's pretty rude to her before he finds out she's Sailor Moon, especially compared to the manga and the reboot.
I know walking and talking at the same time is difficult for you, but you really should pay attention to where you're going.
Stupid turtleneck!
I get that Sailor Moon Tuxedo Mask is endgame, but I just think Seiya is what she needs right now. That's just how I feel. Like, what's Tuxedo Mask gonna do? His body is cold and lifeless. Also, when I first started watching this as an adult woman, because I don't think they ever aired the final season in the US, I had no idea that was the twist, so it's kind of just like, yeah, fuck Mamo. He's not even writing her back. Why shouldn't Usagi flirt with Seiya?
After all, why not? Why shouldn't I?
So Usagi and Seiya are hanging out a lot. They go on a little carnival date. You know, Usagi is completely heartbroken and she's pretending that everything's normal, and Seiya is really there for her during that. Despite this dark cloud hanging over her, we get to see Usagi experiencing moments of joy and lightness when she's with Seiya, and I just think that's nice.
Thanks, Seiya!
What for?
For getting me the teddy bear!
Yeah, right. Get your own, bunhead.
Naturally, this does not last. They discover each other's secret identities, and there's a series of miscommunications between the Sailor Guardians and the Starlights. The other two Starlights, Taiki and Yaten, forbid Seiya from seeing Usagi, and there's a lot of drama and tension between them. Because if there's one thing Sailor Moon's gonna do, it's have an enemies to friends plot. But Usagi is continuing to go through it. Her boyfriend is dead. She's not supposed to talk to Seiya. Girl is absolutely spiraling.
Why are you sitting alone in the dark?
Of course, Usagi promises she won't see Seiya anymore, and quite literally 2 seconds later decides to go see him. Seiya is obviously in love with Usagi, and it's unrequited. But I do believe Usagi was attracted to Seiya. I will go down on this ship.
We just won't tell Mamoru about it.
Also in the manga and the reboot, Usagi and Seiya do kiss, if you even care. 2 things I want to make note of. The Starlight's Guardian names are Sailor Star Fighter, Sailor Star Healer, and Sailor Star Maker. I do not love it. What is a Sailor Star Maker exactly? Would love to know. The other thing I wanted to mention is that Sailor Star Maker has an attack called Star Gentle Uterus. This is from the manga, and Naoko went hard with this naming mechanism. I have no proof, but I feel like she must have had to fight for this one. Yeah, I don't have any further comment to make. I just think people should know about Star Gentle Uterus. Now to get into the gender of it all. In the 90s anime, when Seiya, Taiki, and Yaten are the 3 lights, they present as male and are read as teen boys. They've got the he, him pronouns, and they're projecting this gender presentation to a young female audience that wants to see cute boys. However, when they're the Sailor Starlights, they are canonically women.
I am Sailor Star Fighter!
This differs from the manga, in which the 3 lights are canonically women the entire time and are only disguising themselves as a boy band. To me, they are extremely lesbian coded. To me. In the same interview I mentioned earlier, Naoko expressed dissatisfaction with the change that the 90s anime made in having Seiya, Taiki, and Yaten transition between male and female. In the interview, she simply stated, "All the Sailor Guardians are girls. Regardless of the creator's intention, there are a lot of different fan readings of Seiya's gender identity. I will preface this by saying that I do have a gender studies degree, a completely useless gender studies degree, but I'm also a cisgender bi woman. So my gender analysis is just my interpretation of this, and it might differ from your reading. If you're LGBTQ+ and have a different reading, I would love for you to let me know in the comments, because I'm always curious what other queer people think about the rich gender tapestry that is Sailor Moon. I think it depends on which version you're watching or reading, but there are multiple queer interpretations of Seiya and the Starlights. You could read Sailor Starfighter as a woman undercover in a boy band disguise when she's presenting as Seiya. I think it's worth noting that in the Viz dubs, Seiya is played by a female voice actor, Melissa Hutchison. Obviously, voice actors of any gender can and do play characters of other genders, but I do think it was a conscious choice to cast a woman doing kind of a husky voice when she plays Seiya and a higher pitched voice as Fighter. I think Seiya could also easily be interpreted as either gender fluid, identifying as a man in their civilian form and a woman as Fighter, or gender nonconforming, identifying more femme as Fighter and Mask as Seiya. Also worth noting the scene where Haruka shows obvious disdain for the three lights, and Michiru later explains that Haruka just hates men.
Haruka doesn't like popular boys.
Oh, right.
You're not helping, Michiru.
Some trans fans also read Sailor Starfighter as trans Mask, which I think makes a lot of sense. I'm going to try to explain some context that is necessary to understand the scene I'm going to talk about. So the reason the Starlights came to Earth is because their planet was destroyed by Galaxia, and they're trying to find their long-lost princess, Princess Kaguya. I feel like I'm saying that wrong. The reason they chose to disguise themselves as the three lights, according to their reasoning, was so that they could reach as many women as possible because they think their princess disguised herself as an Earth woman. And there's one scene after Seiya and Princess Kaguya are reunited where she kind of knowingly asks why he chose to specifically use a pretty boy pop idol disguise. And he gets so embarrassed.
Is that the disguise you've been using here?
Oh, in order to find you amongst all the women on this planet, this was the most convenient appearance for us.
The princess is like, hey Seiya, why did you choose this really complicated mask gender performance? Maybe you could have chosen something else that was slightly less theatrical. And Seiya is just like, no, this is literally the only possible way. Like, I'm pretty sure the Starlights could have just been female pop girlies and reached a massive audience of women. Have you ever seen women assemble for a Taylor Swift concert? I went to the Eras tour and I'm pretty sure it's the most women I've ever seen in one place in my entire life. But my theory, and I really have no evidence but a feeling and that one scene to corroborate it, is that Fighter liked being one of the boys.
What's better than this? Guys being dudes.
I think Seiya was into it, especially considering how overtly feminine Sailor Guardian transformations are, even for characters like Haruka, who is often pretty Mask in her civilian clothes. When the Sailor Guardians transform, they get little mini makeovers and superpowers. I swear, if I could just do one 30-second Sailor Moon transformation, that would fix me. The transformation relies on a magic makeup compact and always involves the magical painting of nails and application of lipstick. They get heels, mini skirts, and a big bow. Their earrings change. They receive a beautiful brooch, and they get a blowout. I think that's everything that happens. I should know because the point of a transformation sequence is so they get to reuse the same animation every episode. I do think Naoko's intention originally was that all the Sailor Guardians are women with different gender expressions. Michiru is high femme. Mako would have been called a tomboy in the 90s. Ami is kind of neutral on the whole thing. Haruka is
someone very special to me.
So if you ask Naoko in the late 90s, the Starlights are canonically women who cross-dress. If you watch the anime, it's a little less clear. They could be gender fluid, non-binary, trans Mask, or they could be none of the above since they're aliens from a different galaxy who understand gender completely differently than we do. Regardless, these options all feel pretty damn queer to me.
We're magical girls, remember? We make hopes and dreams come true.
As the quintessential magical girl anime, Sailor Moon paved the way for modern American animated shows lauded for their queer representation, such as She-Ra and the Princesses of Power, Steven Universe, and the Owl House. Sailor Moon's flirty cousins walked so Catra and Lumity could run. I'd even argue that queer themes are built into the DNA of the magical girl genre itself. In 1967, Toei released the anime series Princess Knight, based on the manga written by Astro Boy creator Osamu Tezuka. The series was a big hit, and revolutionized shoujo by introducing longer story arcs, complex themes, and higher stakes drama compared to previous entries in the genre, which at the time were primarily lighthearted comedies. In Princess Knight, the heroine Sapphire is forced to pretend to be a prince via cross-dressing. According to the laws of her kingdom, only male heirs are able to inherit the throne. But Sapphire is able to disguise herself as a boy and mostly avoid detection. Remember, she's able to do this because she has both a boy's heart and a girl's heart, whatever that means. Sapphire also loves being a boy. She's like 10 out of 10 would recommend being a little boy prince. It's awesome. Except for the evil Duke, who's obviously in line for the throne, constantly attempting to out Sapphire. There's definitely different readings of Sapphire's gender, but it's hard to say if she actually identifies as a boy or simply enjoys being unconstrained by gender expectations placed on girls. As the prototype for magical girl narratives, Princess Knight not only deals with themes of sexism, gender roles, and gender nonconformity, it frames them as central to the narrative.
You know that you're really a girl.
I don't care now. I'm going to live and act just like a boy.
I love that because that's exactly what gender is, just a little guy shrugging. One thing that I found super fascinating when I was researching this was the influence of all-women theater troupes on the Princess Knight creator and magical girl genre as a whole. As a kid, Tezuka grew up attending performances of the Takarazuka Revue, which was known for its troupe of actresses performing male roles. These women, known as otaku-yaku, gained a massive fandom of women who would essentially stan them and the heartthrob male characters they played. The performers were known for playing these idealized fantasy versions of men, so they received tons of fan mail, and not all of it was chaste. The otaku-yaku were so dedicated that they cut their hair, cross-dressed, and stayed in these masculine roles outside of their performances. I absolutely love the idea of method acting lesbianism. No, I'm not gay, I'm just method acting. Of course, homophobia happened, and the review received criticism for its lesbian overtones, graphic gay love letters from fans, and even just the performers cutting their hair. In order to minimize the gay allegations, the review had its female performers dress in military uniforms. I can only assume because women couldn't join the Japanese military in real life, but this completely backfired because women in the audience were even more into it. Eventually, in 1940, the otaku-yaku were completely banned from responding to fan mail and interacting with fans. We think of queer fan culture as out of control now with the prevalence of social media, but it's got nothing on the Japanese lesbian theater fandom of the 1940s. Obsessed with that. So if you think about it in a roundabout way, Haruka and Seiya in Sailor Moon were essentially inspired by a theater troupe of butch ladies that horny women were addicted to. And to me, that just feels right. In no small part due to this influence, magical girl narratives are intensely interested in sexuality and gender. Many hit series, such as Revolutionary Girl Utena, feature characters that challenge traditional notions of gender, and some that could be read as gender fluid or gender nonconforming. However, the magical girl genre undoubtedly struggles with elements of gender essentialism. Early entries into the genre in particular reinforce gender stereotypes about the roles of men and women to young female audiences. Transformation sequences become a site of hyperfemininity, where a heroine's best, most powerful self is usually ultra-feminized, or at the very least, a more feminine version of themselves. These key sequences depict a stereotypical and, at times, consumerist model of girlhood that equates femininity with makeup compacts, painted nails, miniskirts, high heels, and long flowing hair. We first see this in 1969 when Toei aired The Secrets of Akko-chan, which featured a magic compact that alters Akko's appearance, similar to the disguise pen in Sailor Moon. During transformation sequences, magical girls are also often aged up in appearance, which I think models the type of fantasy womanhood for viewers to aspire to. For example, Neo Queen Serenity is an aged up, effortlessly graceful evolution of Sailor Moon who models the ideal woman. Her future self is poised, unemotional, and actually has self-control, all things completely at odds with what we know about our klutzy, crybaby middle schooler. Even Sailor Uranus, lesbian butch king, gets a little femmed up to go out and fight with the girlies. In the She-Ra reboot, a recent American series helmed by N.D. Stevenson and inspired by Sailor Moon, noted ponytail lesbian Adora uses a magic sword to invoke the honor of Grayskull, and transform into a larger version of herself with beautiful flowing hair to fight baddies. However, the reboot avoids the gender stereotypical trappings of early magical girl narratives, as well as the original She-Ra series, in no small part due to the influence of the series' queer and trans creator. Even though the magical girl genre struggles with some elements of gender essentialism, the genre in many ways is a reclamation of femininity, depicting feminine-coded characteristics and interests as a strength rather than a weakness. Characters like Princess Knight, Sailor Uranus, and Utena Tenjo offer young viewers alternative models of gender expression and identity. And these series depict femininity as changeable and fluid. In her 2013 book, Excluded, Julia Serrano writes about reclaiming femininity. It's commonplace to presume that feminine gender expression is more frivolous, artificial, impractical, and manipulative than masculine gender expression. And those of us who dress or act femininely are likely to be more tame, fragile, dependent, and immature than our masculine or gender-neutral counterparts. Those of us who are femme are engaged in a constant process of challenging these negative assumptions that are negatively projected on feminine gender expression. Though flawed, magical girl narratives allow young girls a space to see other girls like them, all with varying gender expressions and action roles on screen. Considering the industry dominance of shonen series aimed at boys and seinen series aimed at men, the magical girl genre was a big deal because it allowed girls to see powerful young women in the same active roles as their male counterparts. According to a 1996 interview with Ann America, Naoko said this about Sailor Moon. These days, women really have the upper hand in Japanese society, don't they? My friends and I would have chats about relationships or work and conclude we shouldn't depend on men. I think that women are actually stronger, and I wanted to draw that in Sailor Moon. There's definitely a lot of feminist and queer criticism that's been made about the genre and Sailor Moon specifically, but honestly, I'd be curious to know how Naoko's thoughts on gender and Sailor Moon have changed over the years, if at all. All I really have to go off of is a couple anime magazine interviews from the 90s. Like, girl, what do you mean Sailor Uranus is a woman but has the heart of a man? What do you mean by that? I know this was 30 years ago and the language and translations are a little clunky, but what I wouldn't give to sit down and interview Naoko today and ask her about her thoughts on queer sexuality and gender in Sailor Moon. As a journalist, that is my dream interview. Other popular magical girl series, such as Cardcaptor Sakura and Revolutionary Girl Utena, also notably featured LGBTQ+ characters. I grew up watching the English dub of Cardcaptor Sakura, which I believe was just called Cardcaptors in the US, and from what I remember, it was rewritten to be completely straight. So imagine my surprise when I read the manga as a kid and like half of the main characters were gay. Sakura's brother, gay. Her best friend, a lesbian who's in love with her. Her crush, gay and in love with her brother. I've personally never had this happen to me, but I imagine the consequences would be devastating. Revolutionary Girl Utena, which first aired in 1997, has been lauded for having a queer protagonist. Utena was also directed by Kunihiko Ikuhara, the series director of much of the original Sailor Moon anime. The series' heroine, Utena Tenjo, is a teenage girl who was saved by a prince as a child, inspiring her to want to become a prince herself. By become a prince, Utena really wants to embody the masculine ideal of a male hero. She wears a boy's uniform. All of the girls at her school swoon over her. I'm not 100% sure, but it seems like her best friend is in love with her.
I told you you were my true love! I belong to you!
And in the pilot, Utena becomes the dueling champion, which means she's automatically betrothed to the Rose Bride, Anthe Himemiya. As the series progresses, they form an intimate relationship and fall madly, deeply in love. Some other stuff happens, but they are in love, and in the movie, they do kiss each other on the mouth. The series itself interrogates gender roles and this kind of toxic masculinity that Utena and the people around her idealize. Also, just a lot of queer-coded characters in the series in general. And whatever this is.
Nothing's going to happen to your big brother, right?
Won't you give me a kiss, Toga?
In Madoka Magica, the magical girl trope is subverted through Madoka Kaname, essentially the Sailor Moon of the series. Madoka was released in 2011, and I would describe it as a post-Sailor Moon magical girl anime. Okay, so you know how in Monsters, Inc., the monsters are harvesting children's screams because they think it's the most potent source of energy to power their community? Madoka Magica posits that emotional teen girls are the most potent source of power in their universe, and they're essentially being groomed into becoming magical girls for this purpose. The series is basically like, what if there was a magical girl industrial complex and it was absolutely devastating? The story arc in Madoka Magica, the movie Rebellion, surrounds Homura Akemi, Madoka's best friend and one of the 5 main magical girls. Spoilers for the series, and if you haven't watched it, I could not recommend it more. Though I did go into it knowing a lot of the main spoilers, it didn't negatively impact my viewing experience, just FYI. I know I keep saying this, but it's true. There is not a heterosexual explanation for Homura's behavior during the events of episodes 1 through 12 and the movie. There just isn't. At the end of the show, Madoka basically sacrifices herself to stop the creation of witches, which are the natural enemies of magical girls. However, Madoka's sacrifice means that she will be erased from existence and no one will remember her. But here's the thing. Homura remembers her because of Gay.
No one remembered you except for me. I was the only one in the world who could.
This level of sapphic yearning needs to be studied in schools.
I'd commit the worst sins for one more chance. And if it turned me into a monster, it wouldn't matter. As long as I could have you back.
This is not your run-of-the-mill heterosexual yearning. This is advanced yearning that only queer women and lesbians are able to achieve. Some people are like, no, they're not gay. They just have a bond that's actually way stronger than romance. And I don't really get the positioning of romantic love as more or less important or intimate than platonic love. Like, no one ever says that about Sailor Moon and Tuxedo Mask. Maybe I'll start saying that. Fans also say that Homura's love for Madoka is toxic, as if gay people can't be toxic. Are you kidding me? The way I've seen some of y'all behave. Like, be so fucking for real. In a 1996 interview, Naoko Takeuchi describes the magical girl genre as a style of manga for dreaming Japanese girls. She says it's more oriented towards love stories and psychological depictions. The power of love is obviously a central theme in Sailor Moon, and magical girl narratives almost always center friendships and romantic relationships. Unlike superhero narratives aimed at male audiences, in which romance is often framed as a distraction or something that would get in the way of world saving, in Sailor Moon, love is the entire point. It's what the Sailor Guardians fight for and what gives them strength. At the end of an episode, magical girls rarely have to choose between relationships and saving the day, because love is the key to vanquishing evil. In addition to her compacts and magic wands, Sailor Moon has the ability to love anyone unconditionally. And we stand a pansexual queen. Because a magical girl's primary goal is to protect their loved ones and the people around them, thematically, protection is love in its ultimate form.
I said I'd protect all of you no matter what.
Sailor Moon dedicates her life to keeping her friends safe, but she also often talks about the safety she feels when she's with Mamoru. Usagi says she feels safe when she's in Haruka's and Seiya's arms, and compares that feeling to how she feels when her boyfriend holds her.
I feel so safe, almost like when I'm with Mamo.
She equates romantic love with the feeling of safety, which makes sense as a literal guardian of the planet. In conclusion, Sailor Moon's greatest power is her ability to love anyone. And is that not peak bisexuality? I know I'm gonna get comments on this video like, Sailor Moon is not gay, she is a hetero.
Full hetero.
You're reading too much into this. And like, yes, first of all, I am reading too much into this, not arguing there. But y'all really wanna tell me Sailor Moon is straight? These are all straight person situations and they're just gal pals? This is not heterosexual behavior.
You take care.
She's so cool and pretty. Did you get off here just to chase after that girl? She's so beautiful.
Recognizing another woman you barely know by scent?
And I've got nothing else to do.
Oh.
This perfume smells familiar.
Sailor Moon's superpower is literally being bisexual. Somehow even gayer, kissing girls on the mouth canonically.
Could she be?
Sapphic as hell. In conclusion, the Sailor Guardians are all fruity. No further questions.
just won't tell Mamoru about it.